Welcome to Macon Memories. This is Lynda Wright. It's April 22nd, 2008, and I'm at Randolph-Macon College with Professor Willie Chappell and Professor Jerry Ross.
Good morning. My name is Willie Chappell, better known as Bill now, and I came to Randolph-Macon as a student in 1946 and came back to teach in 1967, retired in 1992.
I'm Jerome Clayton Ross, and usually I'm called Jerry Ross. I came to Randolph-Macon as a student in fall of 1971, graduated in 1975, and have been privileged to start teaching here in the fall of 2006. And so it's my second year teaching here at Randolph-Macon.
Jerry, as I look back over my student days at Randolph-Macon, and as I think back to them, I come to the conclusion that for every student who came here, it was sort of a crisis in their life, and we were a crisis in the institution's life. That is, there was always something going on the scene and behind the scenes also at college. I had just come out of being an infantryman in the 1st Infantry Division during World War II. Got in on the end of the war. Since our birthday is 1925. But when I got back, I thought I was rather grown up. After all, I wanted to get ahead with doing something advantageous to society rather than being combat infantryman. And I found here firmly entrenched a cadre of young men who hadn't been to war, but they were the people in charge on campus, and we had our struggles as to who would be upperclassmen and who would be lowerclassmen, and by and large the service people just ignored the fishtails and all of that.
Okay. I'm just thinking. I just think about what you're just saying, that I was part of the new generation during the times of integration, and so just at the end of the 60s, and so a friend from this area who's now a deacon at a church where I work, he introduced him to me as one of the first 10 blacks to have come to Randolph-Macon, and I never thought of it that way. That I'm probably one of the first 5 or so who graduated after 4 years, Yeah. And so that was really, never thought of it in that case. And so integration, and then when I signed to come here, it was all male, and 2 months after I signed to come, because they were giving scholarships for basketball, it went co-ed, and so a few more African Americans were on the campus, and then about 60 young ladies were staying in Thomas Mary Branch, and so that was probably the talk of the campus. So I think guys would hang around Mary Branch in the water fountain like vultures.
Well, it's interesting. You came as a star athlete from, was it Thomas Jefferson?
Oh, Maggie Walker.
Maggie Walker. Well, anyway, you were the tallest man we'd ever seen on our basketball team. When I was in college, the center was barely 6 foot tall, and we thought he was, oversized. But then we got the generation seemed to get longer legged and armed, and we had a tall man with us. but Jerry came as kind of an ambassador who was very, very much needed, because he brought with him a great supply of goodwill and love of his fellow man. And so he was always sort of an example that we who were teaching wish that all of our students were as he was, but unfortunately they weren't as serious as at their studies, some of them, as Jerry was.
I was just thinking, yeah. I was just sharing earlier as we were just talking that I came for the education, and basketball was a means to that end. I had turned down Virginia Tech that offered me a full scholarship. I'm first generation college, so I didn't want to go that far from home. I visited maybe a couple other schools, and I was scheduled to visit William and Murray before I stopped at Randolph-Macon. After I visited here, I said, this is it. It was nice and small, it's in rural, and I was content to go to all-male school just to get away from Richmond and no distractions, the woods and everything. And it was really great, really great. It was really decent, and I really appreciated that. Yeah.
I remember when I came, the football team, we generally lost, especially when we played University of Richmond.
Oh boy!
And we got walloped regularly by them. But that was a song we used to sing, a cheer. Push them back to the railroad track. Push them back to the railroad track. And I was thinking at that time, all of the college was on the eastern side of the railroad track, and now a good deal of it's over on the other side of the railroad track. In fact, Jerry, I think your office is over there, isn't it?
Yes. It's one of the houses on 206 House Center Street. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Mm.
Do you remember that song, Pushing Back?
Pushing back way
to
back.
the railroad track.
Now that's a different ripple. I didn't remember that one. I was just thinking about Randolph-Macon had seen a few times before coming. My father drove truck, his last job, for 30 years at Rich Food. And he had a friend who lived out in this area, Mr. William Mines, and we'd come to visit him. So I drive past and see Randolph-Macon College. There's just glimpses of it. Had no clue anything about it, and didn't really know anything about it. My senior year, we won the state championship in basketball. And on the night that we won the state championship in Charlottesville, that's where they played at UVA, I met Coach Webb. I was introduced to Coach Webb by, I think his name was Bill Chambers. He once coached at VCU, and I think he did some high school coaching. And he introduced me to Coach Webb. And I think Coach Webb had heard about me by means of Bill Chambers, but also another classmate of mine whom was a roommate when I was here. I played against him in high school. His name was Fletcher Johnson. And I gather that's how they had put me in contact with Coach Webb. And so I guess I was a basketball prospect because I was a good student. I think I was known pretty much as a student athlete in high school. And was
I
in
guess
the mix
Fletcher is still the leading scorer that Randolph-Macon ever produced, male at least.
Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame. I was there when they inducted him. I don't think anybody has topped his points. I can't remember all of them, but one game he scored 52 points. and he broke records, but we had a great team.
I guess that was after the time of Howard Stevens.
Yes.
Howard Stevens was a football phenomenon.
He was phenomenal.
And I tell you, we were unbeatable as long as he carried the ball, because he could run as fast sideways as he could frontwards. And all of the people would be bending down, beating the ground because they missed his tackling.
I think we did with basketball a similar thing. The basketball program excelled. I think Coach Webb had some strategies, and he began to really build an interesting team. And the whole team changed from a slow-paced kind of maybe rigid kind of offense to a kind of fast-breaking, very freelancing offense. And so some exciting players, and I must say the team was smart. We had smart teams.
And Eddie Webb was a good shot.
Yes, he was great.
His son, their son.
He was a left-hander, and that helped keep things off balance too.
That was before the 3-point and the 2-point.
For the 3-point. Yeah.
But anyway, he would make a lot of shots from the sides. Long shots.
He was great.
It's interesting, Paul Webb. I knew that family way back because they came from Petersburg, Virginia, and in fact, his sister Anita Webb was a friend of my wife, and she was helped. She was at our wedding, and also at our 50th anniversary last year. Anita Webb. But Paul was famous as an athlete himself.
Yeah, I heard he was at William.
As a baseball player, and not as famous as Eric Tipton, who is also from Petersburg, but famous in baseball, and an excellent human being.
I'm grateful to Coach Webb. I saw him one time when we were recognized, when we dedicated the floor a couple of years ago, in the fall of 2006. I had a chance to thank him and express appreciation to the family that he gave me a chance to come. He gave me a chance to come, and I was a role player, and so I wasn't a great shooter, so I would be off the bench eventually and things like that. But he gave me a chance, and the chance I wanted was to go to school. And so I came for the education, and I wasn't going to leave without it. And so I carried my books and all. And even upon coming, I heard it had a good religious studies program, and so that's why I picked the place among the schools that I had options, and it was nice and small. Before coming, a Greek professor then contacted me and said, if you're going into ministry, because I decided ministry before my senior year of high school, and so I was picking my schools based on that. He said, if you're going into ministry, you need Greek. So I signed up for Greek for several years. I took Greek, and eventually I took Hebrew from you, Hebrew from you, and so that's all the Hebrew I ever took. And so I only have one course in grammar, one course in reading, and that's all the Hebrew I've ever had. And so
I'm astounded because I never thought I taught that much Hebrew. Because and what attracted you to Hebrew especially?
The thought that Jesus was a Jew kind of dawned on me, and Hebrew seemed like it was an interesting kind of language. And so, in trying to understand Jesus, that's where I began to push towards Old Testament. My my last class, one of my last classes in religious studies was Life and Teachings of Jesus with Ira Andrews, and did a paper, Kingdom of God, a 2-part paper. But out of that course, it really dawned on me. I said, Jesus is a Jew, and in order to understand him, maybe I should study the Old Testament as opposed to the New Testament, because this is written by guys who are not Jews, and they kind of bend him a little, and so that kind of excited me. And also I heard about Hebrew. It was an aura of mystique about Hebrew. There was a guy, Bill Davis, a year or two before, had taken Hebrew, and we heard about it, and so he had to get special permission for this independent study. And I said, oh, I want to take Hebrew. And so it was 4 and 5 of us in the class together doing that, and it was really fun. I used it. I've used it and learned it, and so
I can't understand how you didn't take any other formal classes in Hebrew. I took I came at Hebrew sort of from a tangent or cotangent, and I went to Union Seminary in Richmond, and they had a program there where in January you could take, introductory Hebrew.
Yes,
so I took that, and then I had a tutor for a couple of years, and then I went to Virginia Theological Seminary year and had a lot more Hebrew and Aramaic. And
never took that.
Never took Aramaic?
No, I never took that.
I was going to ask you, what other Semitic languages did you?
That was the only one. When I went to seminary, languages weren't required. I went to Virginia Union School of Theology. It is now the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology, Virginia Union. And I went there because of his focus in black church and ministry. I was anticipating going into the black church and into ministry. They didn't require languages. And so during my seminary time, every morning I have my devotions. It's a regimen that I started almost before college. I would get up and I would practice reading my Hebrew and Greek. So I translate passages in the devotions to keep up, since it wasn't required and didn't want to lose it. And something that I really realized upon coming here, when I saw you and Ira and B.J. Seymour's, I said, you can make a living teaching the Bible. I said, oh, that seems like it may be much easier than going into church. And so around my first year of seminary or so, I was thinking I would make the move to go and prepare the teaching. So I just worked and used my Hebrew on my own. I did my exegesis with my languages and stuff, and the professors, they were very, very receptive. Dr. Solon, Richard Solon, did some courses here. He taught me New Testament, and he's a United Methodist minister, and so he really kept me in seminary. I kind of got a little discouraged. Thought about transferring.
Richard Solon was pastor at Duncan Memorial for 8 years.
All right.
Got to know him very well, and
Nice.
he did a lot of translating from German to English as some of the German biblical students, and he translated. But he's very impressive preacher and educator.
He's a wonderful guy.
He spent the first half of his ministry as a teacher, and the second half as a pastor.
And so that's really interesting.
I thought he ought to have been a bishop, but we sort of, in the Methodist Church, we're sort of like the federal government in that we don't like to get anyone too intellectual to be bishop or president.
He was just a wonderful guy. I'm going to leave that alone.
But when you got to, was the University of Pennsylvania?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
University of Pittsburgh.
Did they require languages, other languages?
They
German
didn't
and,
require it. I had to do German up there. I had to pass French and German exams.
Aren't they?
I
Phi Beta
think
Kappa?
so. I think so. I think the
More
ladies
of
are doing
them.
much better. Yeah, I think so.
It has something to do with maturing.
I think that has a lot to do with it, Lord knows. I'm just thinking of the quality of students. What I really appreciated about here, and it's more or less, it varies, you know. And so we had some guys who were shysters, and I remember guys who were cheaters, you know. But the thought that struck my mind to a significant degree, guys were concerned, and I said guys because that's what we associated with. Guys were concerned with studying. We would get together and study. And so the great fun, I think sometimes with doing exam weeks, you have study weeks or breaks. And what I sensed here was a commitment to study, and you didn't have to be, quote unquote, ignorant. I remember going to guys' dorms and asking them, you know, about this and that. And guys would sit down and share and talk. Fellows would get together and study, and would help one another. And it was just really that kind of fun. And particularly once you got into your major. At that time, religious studies, even now, but at that time, the STEM was the 14-to-1 ratio. But in religious studies, we'd have 3 and 4 and 5 folks in the class. And that was a gem, one thing you couldn't hide. So you had to do your work. But it was just, I mean, how much material we covered and things that we grasped. I still have my notes. They're all in my file cabinets, and what I do, I go and revisit them. My conclusions may be wrong, but I took good notes, and so I got a lot of good data. And my whole teaching style and formatting of notes I got from you, of charting things with notes.
Did you take the course on the quest for the historical Jesus, or was I teaching? I can't remember whether I was teaching it that early on.
Not that one.
Probably
I took Life
not.
and Teachings of Jesus with Ira.
Yeah.
That's
but
something
the
I took.
historical Jesus was, you know, the started by Schweitzer, the quest for the historical Jesus, and then gone through 3 or 4 stages, and now they decided to do it by counting heads and how many think this is a genuine saying of Jesus.
Yeah.
How many don't, not certain. What is that? The group down at Emory.
That's the Jesus Seminar. Is that with
Dominic
Crossan? Yes. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of exciting to follow. Really, really exciting to follow.
I guess Dr. Moreland was still here when.
Yes.
When you, I guess he's retired.
He had retired, but I remember seeing him. He would be on campus frequently, and he gave me some materials one time.
And we were talking about the relationships between the Methodist Church and the college.
Mm.
And according to Virginia law, a church cannot own a college.
Oh, okay.
And so we have our own, board of trustees, but the church doesn't technically own it. But when Dr. Moreland was here as president, it was the closest connection between the church and the college that more so than any other period, because Dr. Moreland was a man of considerable influence in world religion at that time.
Okay.
The ecumenical movement.
Okay.
After World War II.
I didn't know.
He was one of the 4 presidents of the World Council of Churches, along with people like Karl Barth and some others.
Okay. I did not know.
So he was really had clout in the church, but unfortunately ecumenism, fell by the wayside because people were afraid of a super church. They didn't want a super church.
Yeah, well, now we have the mega churches, and that's interesting.
Yeah, we have mega churches, but they're not super churches. But Dr. Moreland, I think he was the one who really carried that forward and got the Crusade for Christ going.
Okay.
That brought a lot of foreign students.
Okay.
People from the Orient.
Yes.
Liu Ding was, I think he ended up as Surgeon General of one of the Asian countries.
Okay.
And he came here. But now I think the connection with the Methodist Church seems to be pretty much exclusive with Duncan Memorial.
Okay.
With the connection between the college and the.
Did they require religious studies courses when you came through? I think they
Oh,
stopped
yes,
that requirement
yes,
around the
it was,
60s or something.
Actually, you had to have. Well, when I came, they had what they call a new curriculum, and there's probably been 2 new curriculums since then. I think the curricular wars could be a subject, couldn't it, in itself? But at any rate, we had new requirements. You had to have 2 languages, be proficient in 2 languages.
2 languages.
Yeah, and we had to take 4 different science courses, but none of them had a lab.
Okay.
So that was, and everybody had to take, take the religion or Bible. It was Bible then, and when George Terry had to retire because of blindness.
Yes.
He, followed by Dr. Clifford Edwards.
Yes.
Cliff Edwards, and became religious studies.
Okay.
And we took things like world religions and added them. And then religion got connected with religion and or philosophy. And then there was religion and or philosophy or history. And we just have gone around in circles, and I guess we still are. We're in between new curricula now, I think.
Yeah, we have those 3 areas: the Bible, religion and culture, and world religions. Those are the 3 areas in religious studies.
Yes.
Didn't quite have it like that when I was here,
but the requirements, you could, if you took history, you could skip religion and philosophy at one time.
Okay. I remember taking Old Testament history or something, and they counted for history. Old Testament history and lit, so they counted in religious studies and also as a history kind of thing. I remember taking that. Dr. Edwards, Cliff Edwards, was my advisor. I remember him. He's at VCU now, I understand.
Dr. Edwards had a very illustrious career at VCU, and a matter of fact, I think he still, teaches some, maybe as retired.
Okay.
And then B.J., after Cliff Edwards had left, B.J. came into teaching religion and ended up the head of the department. And she made a tremendous contribution to the college because she was a friendly kind of feminist.
I think she came the first year that I did, something like that, in that 71 or so. I remember taking her religion and lit classes, and she was the one who introduced me to the thinker whose philosophy provides the rubric for my whole theology and life. And
Kierkegaard?
No, Martin Buber.
Martin Buber.
I remember reading Kierkegaard from her, but Martin Buber was a fascination.
Yes.
That's the guy who provides
I and thou.
I
It can do.
Yeah. I want to teach a course on him someday, and so maybe someday I'll get a chance to do Buber.
Have you read his Tales of the Hasidim?
I've collected them.
Baal Shem Tov.
Yes.
Well, Buber, affected German thought and continental thought as well as thought in this country. I think maybe, disproportionately to, he's not considered along with some of the other philosophers, but he certainly was a very profound one, especially in, the questions of the I and the thou and the it.
I've seen him reference a lot of times in education and in psychology.
Yeah, you
Because
see.
I think when he was writing, those things were kind of in their infancy. So it's like psychology was in its infancy, and he was offering, I think, probably different views from Freud and some of these others, and so. But I love him and enjoy that. I've collected. I think I have all of his books in translation. I've been trying to get a copy of his collected works in German, and so, I would love to just do that. But
I'm sure they've done it.
So, gosh,
the Germans have.
What was teaching like here for you?
Well, it was a big adjustment because I'd been a pastor for about 13 years.
Oh, okay.
And I served 3 or 4 churches.
Okay.
A couple as assistant pastors. And I think they were very, every time I was an assistant pastor, there was usually a war going on in that particular church. We either wanted to move the church or, physically or theologically or something. But anyway, I survived those 2 apprenticeships.
Oh, boy.
And then I had 2 churches of my own. 2 different pastorates, one in Chesterfield County and one in Hanover.
Okay.
So I enjoyed that, but I seemed to be spinning my wheels in the pastoral ministry, that I'd managed to work myself from the bottom of the ladder to the bottom of the ladder. Not that I wanted to climb, but I got tired about walking about in place, walking in place, not moving anywhere. And teaching, I was interested in teaching and study. I still study, I guess, 3 or 4 hours a day and write.
That's great. I got some of your pieces.
I'm an eternal student.
I think that's
I'm sure you are too.
I think that's it. I pray for several things. I pray for good eyesight and a sound mind until the day I die, so I can read and study. Of course, they may have some side effects.
Do you write, Jerry?
Oh, gosh, I do. Yes, and it's not published stuff. And so the regular, I call my sermons lessons. I write those. I've written over hundreds of prayers because I write rituals and stuff for church. I've written a collection of meditations. I started them in college here, and they went for 20-some years or so, 20, 30 years, like a meditation for each day. And I think I may try to publish them. The thought is, what crosses my mind, who would buy it? But
well, now, if that's a consideration, then it's a very serious one, because publishing seems to take about as much ego as being president, I think.
I don't know.
Because you've got to be willing to toot your horn or blow it pretty loudly.
I'm not too good at that, but
I never was very... I wrote and took refuge in what they called the Vanity Press and did a couple of books that way. And then I did a couple through our, printing office.
okay.
They can
yes.
put together a pretty good book.
Okay.
I wrote a book of prayers.
Yes, I had some of the meditations. I think one or two of yours.
And then I wrote a lot of poetry. And it's what they call obscure. Oh, everybody thinks it's obscure, which is the same as being obscure.
Oh, boy.
That's what you call a closet poet, and now I've gone back in the closet.
I've written some articles and pieces, and through a subsidy publisher, I did a book, a compilation, and I have written a revision of it. Eventually, I guess I may try to send it in. I'm more taken with just getting together thoughts, but it's taken me a long time to just get bits and pieces together. And so I have some ideas, but nothing that's earth-shaking.
Well,
Yeah, just to make,
I don't know if it's a prejudice on my part. It probably is, but it seems to me that religious writing is now in a terrific slump. If you would, everything is a how-to book now.
Okay.
How-to, and nobody seems to be asking, well, how to what? Yeah, or how to pray, how to lift yourself by your own bootstraps. But I don't see much coming out except on the university presses. That attracts my attention.
To me, it's like new takes on old ideas, and so I haven't seen anything that's really startlingly new. And I think writing has now taken on a different twist. I think persons write because they have to, not because they have something to say or something new to offer. And so
in scholastic world, that's true because publish or perish. Is that in some schools it comes down to that.
I think that's a joy for me being here. The focus is on teaching.
That's right, and teaching is what we live by, and what, after all, that we do, that is important. How much we can motivate our students to read. I followed, after graduation one year, I was following a group of students, and one was saying to the other, "Thank goodness I'll never have to read another book."
And that seems to be sad. I had reading projects during the summer, and I was happy to get out of school so I can go and read what I wanted to. And I have my reading projects, and I don't know. It's just interesting. It's like pulling teeth. Have you had any experiences with the senior project? Did any students do? I first saw that with Dennis Howard the other week. He's the only person that I have known and seen do the senior thesis, and I saw it. I thought that was really interesting, that project thing. I thought that was really a winner, but I don't know how widespread that is and if there are any around in the stacks.
Oh, yes, there's plenty of them around.
Okay. Randolph-Macon, with my students here?
Yeah, I did one on Aristotle and Greek tragedy when
Okay.
I was here,
How long was it? How big?
It was
did
about 100 pages, I think.
Okay.
And one of the best that I've ever seen was one by Bill Mallard, William Mallard.
Okay.
Taught at Emory for many, many, many years.
Okay.
And he wrote one on the poetry of T.S. Eliot. I thought was first class.
Okay.
And yeah, there are whole stacks of them up there somewhere in archives.
Okay, because I just said that seems to be so interesting.
But as for leading senior projects, I did one or two, and none of them were pleased me too much.
Okay.
Because they start out saying they're going to do a lot, and ends up they don't.
I can imagine.
Garrulous. I'm garrulous.
I don't know what I could say as just the thought is, I'm happy to come back here, and my coming back and teaching is to give back to this alma mater. I worked at my previous one for 24 years, and so I kind of, with hope, anticipate spending the end of my career here. No time soon, but to give maybe 20-some years here.
That would be great.
And also I feel like I'm a guardian of a tradition. And so as I talk to students, it's just, just try to impress upon them, I guess, what Randolph-Macon is, it's just so they can appreciate it. I explored, I enjoyed, I looked, I learned, and I made contact with the students, and it really formed me. And I'm kind of concerned that the students won't really take advantage of that, and so I'm pushing, and the students for me are like children.
Well, with the honors program that we have now and the merit scholarships, that gives. Well, I remember in my days, that was beginning. You began to get a number of students who are very serious.
Okay.
And the reason we don't have a great number of ministerial students is that we have outpriced ourselves.
Okay.
We are priced out of the market because of the cost of the school.
Oh, okay.
And also we have a different clientele now.
Okay, I can see.
A wealthier, more scattered clientele.
Okay.
But the Bailey scholarships should,
I think
improve that.
They're bringing some in. As I teach to that, I'm really trying to teach religious studies as a part of the whole liberal arts enterprise. And so teaching is oriented not towards clergy, pre-ministerial, but just help persons to be conscientious. So I'm hoping that they'll see how this fits into the mix, and so I'm always trying to defend it or explain it for being informed. I'm going to stop. I thank you for the opportunity, and it's nice being with you, Professor Chappell. We called Professor Chappell when I was in school, we called him Yah Willie. And so Yah Willie Chappell.
I saw that.
So
I won't say where I saw that. But I've seen that expression.
It was probably in my remarks in honor of him as we sent letters. And so I'm just grateful. I thank you for a kind of, this is my mentor in religious studies.
I certainly feel that the student has gone ahead of the mentor. And proud of your work and contribution you made to the school and helped the spirit of the school. And I think you're still doing that. So I wish for you a long tenure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chappell and Professor Ross.